Sorry about that. Bad timing. I never thought I would run out of battery power like that. Right in the middle of an exciting story, too. Like I was saying, I literally saw 500 people come out of their seats, almost a foot, jumping at one time. That's the effect that the movie had on people. We'd been set up, we'd been excited, tension was building up, and the whole audience reacted in an uproar. I must have seen the movie 2 or 3 times that summer. In those days, that would be a lot for seeing a movie in a theater. I'll tell you what, a year later, I started dating my wife. Probably later that year. We'd gone out a little bit before, but the next year, when Jaws was re-released in theaters to pick up some extra scratch, I know that she and I went together, and she told me the story about having read the book and being in the bathtub while she was reading the book and having a bar of soap fall into the tub and splash when she was in a scary part of the book, and she jumped right out of the bathtub and ran to the door and frightened everybody else in the house with her scream. That's the way people were reacting to the movie Jaws at the time. It was, like I said, a cultural phenomenon. It was something that was pretty spectacular. Many years later, when we had kids, I loved sharing movies with my kids, and I'm afraid I'm a bad man. I shouldn't have done this. When my kids were little, they saw, of course, the cover of the movie Jaws on I think it must have been a Laserdisc at that point. In fact, it could even have been that Laserdisc right there. It's quite possible. They wanted to see it. And I said, no, it's not really appropriate. And they begged and they begged. And I said, okay. And we showed them the movie. But what we did was each one of them sat on one of our laps. So I had one of the kids on my lap. My wife had one of the kids on her lap. And anytime something came along that was a little too intense, a little too scary, up went the hands over the eyes. Sometimes we'd hum and sing a little bit to cover up the screams or the horrifying kinds of things. And then we'd put our hands down so they could see that something bad had happened, but they didn't see the whole bad thing that happened. And they knew a little bit about the story. So, as it happens that, my kids were young, my wife and I would go out, and my mother would babysit for us. And she learned how to use the Laserdisc player. The kids always wanted to see a movie, and sure enough, they asked to see Jaws one time. Well, my mother was not an idiot. She looked at them and said, "No, you can't see that movie. That's not really appropriate for you." And the kids said, of course, "Well, Mom and Dad have already shown us this movie." Now, my kids were 4 and 6 at the time, and my mother must have thought we were insane, but the kids told her the story, so she assumed that we had in fact shown her the story. What she didn't know, of course, was that we hadn't shown them all of the gruesome parts. So there she sat one night with the kids, both crawling up on top of her, horrified by the things that they hadn't seen before and traumatized for the rest of their lives. A summer or two later, I know that actually I think it might have been the very next summer, we went camping with some friends of ours. Actually, they camped, we stayed in a condo. But we were up in Mono Basin, up there near June Lake and all that area. And the kids stayed one night at the campsite with our friends, and everybody was telling scary stories. And Amanda was only 4 at the time, and whenever she wanted to tell a scary story, it always started off, "It's a scary story about a shark named Jaws." And that's the story that she told all summer long. A scary story about a shark named Jaws. So my kids have been up to their necks in this their whole lives. This is a movie that swallows them. In fact, I'm speaking to you right now from my daughter's bedroom. This is a cheap reproduction poster that a friend of hers gave her for her birthday, and it probably cost $5 or $10 for the poster. The frame is something my wife and I supplied, $300 for that. So that'll just show you how insane we are when it comes to this particular movie, and her especially, because it is her favorite movie, and it is one of my favorite movies, maybe my number 2 film of all time. I'll tell you what, my daughter, Amanda, who I just mentioned, this movie was so important to her that she wrote her college admissions essay on the Indianapolis speech. that Quint talks about in the scene there on the boat. And everybody who's seen Jaws knows the story behind the Indianapolis speech, how it was originally written, and then John Milius wrote in some, and then Robert Shaw modified it a little bit for himself. And, they really did a lot of work on it. And I'll tell you what, I've got a blog post on this. To me, that is one of the great acting scenes of all time, that 4 minutes when Shaw tells the story of being on the Indianapolis. And it's one of the things that makes this movie different. It's not just a scary movie. It's not just about a fish hunt. It's about human beings who have history and passion and fear that are a big part of their lives. Some of the things that are controlling the way they're communicating. All right, we've been to several screenings before of the movie. In fact, I took the kids and my wife to a screening at Universal Studios probably back in 1997, I think it was. And the screening was actually at the Universal Amphitheater. They had a giant screen that they set up across the stage. This is an amphitheater that they usually, rock acts usually play at. And part of the auditorium was closed off because they weren't going to sell 5,000 seats to this particular screening, but they did sell a couple of thousand seats because it was pretty packed. And we got there a little early, and they had had a screening earlier in the day of Psycho, and we got to sit in with Pat Hitchcock, who was there talking about her father and the movie Psycho before the movie Jaws screened. And we just came to see Jaws, so we stayed and saw the movie there. So that was the first time that my kids saw Jaws on the big screen, and it was a pretty big screen. Then about 4 years ago, my daughter and I went to see The Shark is Still Working, which is a documentary about the impact of the movie Jaws. And we saw it at the LA United Film Festival, which was a great experience because they had the production designer, they had the screenwriter, Carl Gottlieb, they had 2 or 3 of the supporting actors there, some of the other production people, and a couple of the producers who all came up and spoke about the film. And as well as talking about the movie Jaws, they talked about the background and making of the documentary. It was a wonderful experience. And that film is now available as part of the Jaws Blu-ray package. If any of you are Jaws fans and have not seen The Shark is Still Working, there's a treat that you've got coming to you, and I would strongly recommend that. The week before we saw the documentary, they had a screening of Jaws at the Vista Theater, not too far from where the LA United Film Festival was screening there in the not Silver Lake area, I guess the Los Feliz area. And so we went to the Vista Theater to see Jaws on the big screen, and Carl Gottlieb was there. And Carl Gottlieb got up and spoke a little bit before the movie, and after the movie, he was out in the lobby and he was signing for people. And we didn't get an autograph, but we did get to shake his hand and talk to him a little bit about the movie, and that was quite exciting. So that was another one of those experiences that we had where we got to see the movie in its best environment on the big screen. Now, I tell you what, I'm incredibly jealous of my youngest daughter. She was spoiled rotten. She went to USC, which I did as well, but she was in addition to being a communication major, she had a cinema minor and an advertising minor, and she took several classes that dealt with motion pictures. And one of the classes focused on the films of Steven Spielberg. They showed most of Spielberg's works. They talked about them. There are several scholarly articles that have been written about them. And the great Steven Spielberg appeared and spoke to their class in probably the moment that she'll most remember from being in college. One of those fantastic experiences that you only get when you are in a place like USC. So she was really happy about that. But one of the things that they did do during that semester is they screened the movie Jaws, but they didn't do it during the class. They screened the movies primarily in the evening. So I met her down there, and I was able to see Jaws on the big screen down at the USC campus in one of the theaters there in the George Lucas or Steven Spielberg Film Center there. And that was really a good experience too. Jaws is one of the movies that I blogged about the first summer that I started my blog project. If you ever go to the blog, you'll read that I got started on the project primarily because I had some dead time between when my spring classes had finished and when my my summer classes began. So instead of wasting that time, I decided I'd start a blog project, and I blogged about movies that I saw in the summers of the 1970s, and of course Jaws is on that list. It may in fact be like the 10th or 12th film I blogged on. You can check it out later yourself. It's a pivotal movie of the summers of the 70s. Like I said, it changed the way motion pictures are made and marketed, and I loved writing about it. I shared some of the experiences that I just talked to you about in that blog as well. Since that original blog, I've posted 2 or 3 other articles on Jaws on my website. We did a Robert Shaw Film Festival a couple of years ago because I think we'd come across some film that he was in that Amanda hadn't seen before, and we watched it. She said, "She's so great," and I said, "Well, we should do a film festival." So I think I did 5 or 6 Robert Shaw films, and I wrote again about his performance in Jaws, probably one of the most unrewarded but greatest motion picture acting performances ever. And I still wish that somebody would acknowledge how terrific it was 38 years later. Give him a special Academy Award or something. My gosh, how ridiculous is it? I bet most people won't remember the other nominees that year, much less the winner, George Burns. All right. I also participate in conversations on a number of other blogs, and I'll tell you what, Jaws is a film that comes up on almost everybody's blog if they're a movie fan. I've yet to encounter somebody who didn't love the movie. There are some people out there who are haters, but they haven't written their own blogs about it. They just come in and drop in some comments now and then about how much they didn't really care for the film. But anybody who writes about it on their blog obviously is going to care a great deal about the movie. I'll tell you what, if you are interested in reading a really terrific article about Jaws that goes into the history of the making of the film, its cultural impact, it gives you a good thumbnail history without having to read a whole book. My friend Dan Fogarty has a post at his website, Fogg's Movie Reviews. I'll post a link for you down below on the site here so that you can find that later on. What I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to try and put together a few video clips when we're at the movie. We'll see how it goes. I don't know how lucky I'll be. I don't know whether everything will come out the way I want it to. But I got enthusiastic, like I said, about talking about movies again and maybe putting up the video blog, like I said. And I thought, after listening to the podcast, I thought I might as well go ahead and take a chance. I'm going to see if I can talk to a few people at the movie tonight, maybe take some pictures and add them to this post. So I'll tell you what, until we get a chance to meet again, my friends, and I do think of you as my friends, after all, amity means friendship, I'll be continuing to watch movies. Hopefully you'll come back and visit and enjoy what is hopefully a sight and an activity that is entertaining to you. And if you don't like the movie Jaws, don't ever come back, because I don't want to hear from you. All right. Farewell and adieu, you fair Spanish ladies.